Let's talk with Eric in Texas. Hi, Eric.
Hello. How's everybody doing this evening?
Hey.
Good. What can we help you with tonight?
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around this HSP, identity, and really, I'm having a hard time because it feels like there are a lot of very mushy edges so far, and so I'm trying to kind of clarify that a bit. A couple of the things are, and I do understand, by the way, just as an aside about the autism thing. I've worked with autistic kids for a long time, and I definitely understand that a lot of people who need a one-on-one do exhibit a lot of those behaviors. But I think Christy you did very well, say that it is a spectrum. I mean, I have a friend who is on spectrum who has a PhD in abnormal psychology and like drastically, has to travel to different societies, cultures to do their work. But that said, so I think that, labeling the difference between with autism, I don't see that. And also, I think there are just a couple parts of it, like, is it either genetic or a self-identified thing? Because you could wind up gatekeeping people outside of a group that they belong to, if that's not very clearly stated, because I'm not diabetic until somebody tells me I'm not. That's a clear medical thing that you test for. And if it is something and we're just deciding, like you brought up the intersection with gender. And I think that's a fantastic place to talk about that, because Christy, if you think that, someday maybe the science will catch up, the position is not to say, well, we're going to decide that it is genetic and we're going to act on genetic ways. Otherwise we wind up gatekeeping these communities. And you know what I mean? How do we stay away from gatekeeping when we're talking about HSP, and how do we identify it in a clear way other than what we're not, but what we are? Like my dad was, and I'll give you the chance to talk. I know I'm saying a lot, but I just had a whole lot there. My dad was a narcissist. And being a narcissist, I grew up with this one-upsmanship of all of my feelings. And it was an invalidation of my feelings and the feelings of the rest of my family. Because, well, you're sad, I'm sadder. You're cold, I'm colder. You're just experiencing it more. So how do we filter that out? Because I feel like it could be a place where I haven't seen a place where we can kind of separate those yet.
Yeah, if I can jump in a little bit, Courtney, I think the thing we haven't maybe highlighted yet in all of this is distress, right? Like, we're encouraging people, if you think this might be true about you, perhaps talk to a psychologist or have a test done or any of these kinds of things. And the reason that you would do that is because there's something bothering you. There's something about the way that you fit into your life that just doesn't quite work for you. It's not entirely unlike being left-handed in a right-handed world. If they aren't making the proper desks or offering the correct scissors to you, it can make your life a little bit difficult. So I don't see gatekeeping as a concern, because if somebody is experiencing any of the distress that we've described, whether it's from autism or whether it's from neuroticism or whether it's from being a highly sensitive person or sensory processing disorder or, if you're having those kinds of issues, talk to a doctor about it, talk to a psychologist or a counselor of some sort, and they'll be able to work with you to kind of rule out certain things, and using the best information, whether that's statistics or self-report or these different ideas, to be able to try to find a cluster of issues that may or may not match yours. It really becomes about just identifying where the problems are and seeing if there's any opportunity to offer relief.
I mean, as far as self-advocacy is concerned, and trying to find help and finding ways to describe yourself, I entirely agree. I'm just trying to find the usefulness of HSP in that context, because we're talking about soft sciences with that. We're talking about genetics though earlier, and I mean, if there are studies that have...
I mean, bipolar disorder is also highly genetically concordant, as is schizophrenia, and we're not able to diagnose either of those using any, I don't want to say empirical means, because we do have statistics and we do have these other sciences, but it's not a blood test. And that's just sort of the reality of the therapy world. Is that fair?
Is it to me?
I'll just lay it out there for the table. I mean, I'm kind of acknowledging that, like, yeah, I have a master's in science and I am a scientist in that kind of way. I'm an empiricist, absolutely. But I recognize that we are using our best guesses on a lot of these things and just looking for something that is functional, something that fits. I'm myself not necessarily concerned with a diagnosis or a label so much as I am a general cluster. You know, I want to know what ballpark you're in. I want to know what game you're playing or what neighborhood you live in. And then I want to get to know you as an individual and try to work off of that. But this label of HSP or some of the other labels that we've been bandying about, they help us to get a general idea of things that you might be experiencing, so that when we get to know you as a person, we have a little bit of a shortcut. We have some opportunity to jump in.
I mean, as far as, you know, breaking down empirical tools, I understand there's definitely usefulness for grouping, but I don't... Courtney, would you agree that identifying HSP is limited only to, you know, finding potential groupings of things that people can identify as? Because I feel like there's a whole lot more to it that you were describing. I thought there was more to it.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more. And, you know, again, it's not a disorder. It is a trait. So it is the simple fact of someone's nervous system being highly activated all the time. And this is people's experience. It's not a lot of people's experiences. And that's why, you know, a lot of people are having a hard time just even seeing this as real, because they may have not come across it before, whatever it may be, you know, but this is just to help people. It was definitely my experience, and I felt a lot of comfort in it. And I found a lot of tools that helped me with my unique needs that I've never been, you know, aware of before. I had never been seen in this way before. And so I just hope that it does that for other people.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, you know, finding that label, if it works for you, obviously not everybody needs a label. And if you don't like them, then you don't need them. That's fine. But a lot of the time, if you feel like you're the odd one out in a situation, and again, going back to the gender thing, like I can identify with that, where, oh, there's a word for this, and there's a community that has built up a language and understands like the specific, you know, challenges and also positives of living in this particular body in this particular way. So I totally understand that component and am all for it. I think where I'm getting hung up, and Eric, maybe this is where you're coming from as well, is it sounds like we're at once talking about this in terms of like, hey, this is an identity that helps you find a community, helps other people get a shortcut to understanding you better, helps you find coping mechanisms. But then we're also moving into this thing where, oh, it's an overstimulated or highly stimulated immune system response, which seems like a very different thing. Nervous system, sorry. Yes. So like, to me, I think I'm wondering how we're jumping from one to the other, or like where that overlap is examined in research.
Yeah. Yeah, so this has been examined in a lot of research, and I'm realizing that we don't even have time for that. But, you know, there's lots of research. Again, I'm going to suggest that people go and get the book, because it is literally filled with research.
and I've got a number of different studies from a number of different folks highlighted. I really do want to encourage anybody who is skeptical about the existence of these traits to take a look at all of this. But I guess to both Vi and Eric, I don't entirely understand the distinction that you're making, because the truth is, this is how all of counseling really works. Like, this is sort of maybe our worldview in dealing with these kinds of issues. I mean, not to keep throwing the same metaphor at everybody, but we talk a lot about gender on this show, and about how it is in many ways tied to our hormones, how it is tied to our genetics, how we have some understanding of it from a laboratory perspective, but that mostly we just know that boys tend to do these kinds of things and girls often do those kinds of things. And knowing what kind of label or identity lines up with you, yes, it helps you find your people, and it helps you understand yourself a little bit differently, but it also gives you the opportunity to recognize, I likely have this trait. You know, if I am this or that, I'm probably this other thing as well. And that can just be a shortcut to understanding yourself and expressing yourself to other people.
Right. I think I pinpointed exactly like where that difference is for me.
Yeah.
And it feels like, and I might be misconstruing, a lot of there have been moments where certain things have been said that seem to contradict what we understand about how things work, such as mirror neurons being able to perceive somebody who you're not interacting with directly, someone in another house, for example. And so using a scientific understanding of the nervous system and how it's functioning makes perfect sense. I'm fully on board with that. My question is, that's not enough for me to prove that these other things are actual things that are happening. So if we're using the diagnosis to say, oh, well, these things happen to me, that's where I'm getting hung up, I think, if that makes sense. And Eric, I know you're still on the line.
But, I'm a little bit confused.
Actually.
Yeah, there's a concept I was wondering if we would have time to get into, and I guess we'll just go ahead and dive into it. But it's this idea of neuroception. There is a number of different studies that seem to evidence that, in addition to, of course, our five senses, we recognize that there's much beyond that. You know, that we are taking in information greatly beyond our eyes, our ears, our nose, all of this. But not only that, neuroception is this concept that our bodies are constantly sort of checking in on the nervous system of the people around us. You know, I'm trying very hard to be brief, because I know we've got a lot of information to try and pack into this hour. But
we actually do have a couple other callers that we definitely need to get to as well.
Yeah, stacked up. All right. So as quickly as I can, there's a lot of functionality to this. You know, if a group of primates are all sitting on a tree and one of them notices a snake, their breathing is going to change. Their posture is going to change. They're going to send out a million subtle cues, and your body is going to take in that information through a number of different sensory organs, sometimes within your awareness and oftentimes outside of your awareness. Just because you're not aware that you saw something doesn't mean you didn't see it, doesn't mean you're not experiencing it. And a highly sensitive person is taking in much, much, much more information than the person next to them. And therefore, they almost seem clairvoyant in the sense that they're picking up and noticing all of these subtle cues, all of these tiny little gestures, all of these minute little sounds. And in doing so, are seemingly a step ahead of the game. Does that help bring any clarity to all of this?
No.
No. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, that's on me.
So first,
I wish I had an answer for you.
Or maybe on me for not understanding your question. I don't know if that's on me or on you, boss.
No, you did a great explanation, which caused a ton more questions, which made it more fuzzy. I guess, Courtney, do you feel like you seem to be have kind of some kind of telepathy or what's the word?
So I have claircognizance, clear knowing. I have clairvoyance, clear seeing, and clear audience, clear hearing. So I see, hear, and feel spirit.
Okay, I have an entire show based on that. I would love for you to call on Sunday. I don't think those are things.
Okay, that's fine.
And I think I could leave it to
I respect that.
So do you think all HSPs are clairvoyant?
No, I don't think all of them are.
Okay.
But I feel like a lot of them have experiences that maybe they don't understand. So like the clear knowing, sometimes we know shit and we don't know why. We know, I don't know why I have this bad feeling. I need to call mom. And sure enough, you call mom, something's wrong. I know that my best friend's upset. I'm going to go downstairs and see her. I know someone's not feeling well. I don't know why I know these things. Sometimes I wish I didn't know these things, but that is my experience. And, there's no scientific base to explain that. Otherwise it would be explained by now. But, science hasn't caught up to that. And all we can go off is experiences, and it's fine.
Actually, Christy gave a great scientific possible explanation, which I think very clearly shows that as not being in the realm of some kind of, clear sight, but as much as, hey, I noticed something that I didn't in the front of my mind think about, but subconsciously took in some information and processed it later on throughout the day and went, hey, that's the thing. There's definitely a line there. But just one other question, because I know you got a whole bunch of other callers, and that is
Jesus, there.
If HSP, I know if HSP is something that is self-identified, which I am totally on board with, because if that's the case, I think I'm HSP as well. I think everyone who is on spectrum and says they're HSP, if that's the case, that would entirely invalidate you saying, well, the difference is X, wouldn't it? Because it is it if you say that's it. And I think that's wonderful for creating communities and for creating ways for people to understand themselves and explore those better.
If there was a question in there, I did not grasp it, friend. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I think you're building off of the previous caller's question, which was, can you be on the spectrum and HSP at the same time? In which case, how do you determine where certain experiences are coming from? The one thing or another? Is that what you're asking, Eric?
I mean, are you seeing through your left eye or your right eye?
Criteria to invalidate. How do you form a criteria to invalidate a group that is entirely self-identified?
We're not looking to, to be honest, it's not a goal. It's not entirely self-identified. We're recognizing that people, that we don't have widespread available testing, but we do recognize that people who self-identify show these traits overwhelmingly, and that they're not shared by the rest of the population.
Okay. I think we should probably move on to other callers at this point, because we do have at least 3 that I want to talk to before we jump in. But thanks for calling in, Eric. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I love the show.
Take care, boss. Get your own show.